Getting this right out of the way up front, this is as spoiler light as I think I've ever made a review. The embargo doesn't allow discussion beyond a certain date in the game, and key other aspects are not allowed either, but we've gone above and beyond that restriction as best I can. The footage has been contained to the demo sections. Every care has been taken for you to enjoy this game without us or anyone else ruining it. You're not going to have any of the usual Atlus shenanigans spoiled for you, and I might end up putting out a more spoiler-heavy video at a later date, but if I do, it will be clearly marked. You can watch this one knowing that we are not going to take away your fun for this game, because I hate having that happen. If you don't want to see any footage, then of course feel free to listen, and if you do want to be extra safe, then I recommend you go and play the demo. It's incredibly generous. It gives you around 5 to 6 hours. It carries over to the main game. You can go and deal with that and then come back, and you're going to know that all we're going to be showing you is going to be stuff from basically that section of the game. You're going to be able to then know what awaits you going forwards. So go away, play that, come back. Right, with all that out of the way, let's get this started, because this is Metaphor Refantazio.
The prince. For having lost him, you too would abandon me. Is this the price of my failure, then? Of course. 'Tis only just that you be the one to send me to him now.
No! You have it wrong! The prince is alive!
Mission? Killing Luis to lift the prince's curse.
His Highness survived the attack, but the curse hanging over him was powerful and complex.
If we don't hurry and find a way to get close to Luis, we're sunk.
What have we got here? He's an elder!
The minority tribes face walls and barriers everywhere they look in society.
I've been reading, and I hope that someday we can make our kingdom like the place in this book.
A world with no need for that abstract dominion we know as magic. You carry a certain fantasy novel, yes? It was my hand that penned it.
Dreamers like you are always the first to die. You think he's one of Luis's men? The villagers plead to be spared, but I know better than to confront a human.
You left one survivor!
Certainly. It was the first village to be destroyed by the human menace.
I will show you truth! The truth of reality!
I suppose it's only a matter of time until Luis takes the throne.
Heed me, O kingless.
It can't be His Majesty.
But he was dead. Whosoever hath truly earned the greatest faith of the citizenry shall ascend to throne and crown by right of kings.
But now the throne's in anyone's reach, eh? Suppose the king's magic wasn't just a myth.
Let's enter this tournament for the throne.
What? Wait just a minute.
This could be just the excuse we need to get close to Luis.
A really bad man might be our king. Why?
The tragedy of the royal family is only the beginning. So, what would you say to an alliance?
We were with him, but we couldn't protect him. I'm sorry.
The men I fought beside was not so ruled by anger and malice.
Count Luis gave us a dream to fight for.
So, contestants, are you ready?
What? Blast, I say! Wait! Found you, behave! It'll crash!
Whoa!
How do you follow up a game like Persona 5? A title that has been referred to as one of the greatest RPGs of all time, an unabashed masterpiece, and unconscionably sublime, among other things. That's a tall order. Metaphor Refantazio is undoubtedly going to get compared to Persona 5 and Persona in general in a lot of the reviews. That Persona core is right on show from the very beginning. You've got the turn-based combat, you've got the bonds, companionship, all that stuff, and all of the usual Atlus things going on. There's nothing wrong with having it compared to it either. It gives players a solid foundation to start from, and it means that they know what to expect. And after all, if it's not broke, why fix it? That core works. Metaphor Refantazio does away with the modern-day stylings for a plot, and instead goes for that fantasy monsters and monarchy slice. The king has died, and as such, a new successor needs to be named. It's fine though. He wasn't doing that bang-up of a job anyway, as monsters had started to encroach closer and closer to the city walls, animosity between the tribes had started to build up and was at an all-time high, and the church is staking a pretty strong claim as to why they should be the next ones to take power. They're the only ones that can fix all this. But things are never that simple. If you've played the demo, you know what happens next. If you haven't, not going to go over it in too grand a detail, but I'll simplify it and say that it's determined that the will of the people shall decide the next ruler of the land. And so begins a popularity contest, ranging from lowly bounty hunters all the way up to the church itself, vying for who will be the next king, as decided by you, the people.
The people.
It's a great setup and start, but it is slower. The first few hours lack the punch of previous Atlus titles that drop you right into the action. Metaphor is a slow burn in that regard, but it's no less enjoyable. And given that you're looking at 70 to 80 hours at the low end, it's allowed to take one or two of those to set that stage. This is a grand epic tale. It needs to introduce the world and the stakes, and it does it flawlessly. That's the strongest element in Metaphor. The story and character design in Atlus games is unparalleled, and Metaphor is no different. We're given a backdrop with multiple elements, characters who get their moment to shine, and villains who I adore. My main concern was trying to figure out exactly where the meta story was going, or when certain elements would be introduced, and what the resulting payoff would entail. It was juggling some heavy themes and some interesting elements, and so it really has to make the payoff worth it and get that landing right. And those concerns were all unfounded, as Atlus are no stranger to handling heavier themes or using the hooks that they set up. Metaphor is rife with those kind of things that games would normally shy away from. Tribalism, distrust, and systemic racism are on display. You're dealing with questions about anxiety, identity, purpose, worth. Like a midlife crisis lasagna that you then cover with a sauce made of an unhealthy amount of religious overtones. The religious elements are key to the story, and are pretty much always on display. The Church of Sanctism spreads out to fill the entire space provided. Blind faith would be an understatement for a religion that uses the word closury while having you cover your eyes with your hands to pray. As a wise man once said,
I know writers who use subtext and they're all cowards.
It's impressive to see a game utilize anxiety and melancholy as integral elements of a game. They're not just bricks in this house, they're the foundation it's built upon. They're core to the whole thing. When a character awakens, they bury their hand into their chests and rip out their heart. The imagery of exposing one's vulnerabilities, embracing who you are, and the path you walk to be able to reach your true strength is kind of beautiful, if you ask me. That's some really great symbolism. There's a lot going on here in this game that I want to talk about, but can't, as lessons that we really could learn from. Or you'll see YouTubers making complaint videos about how they're heavy-handed messages rather than focusing on escapism, as if feeling something while playing a video game is blasphemous. The character design is phenomenal as well. Shocking, I know. Every character feels fleshed out and flawed in their own way. Their personal stories add to their background as you get to explore what makes them tick and what keeps them up at night. Even side characters are flamboyant overcompensators or grounded in ideals that are ingrained. You end up feeling for these characters and just really enjoying their stories. Stroll, a lordling in name, living in the shadow. Hulkenberg, the loyal knight who failed their mission as your starting companions, are both fantastic. Of course, I miss the flair and stupidity of characters like Ryuji, but that doesn't detract from the strength of these new characters. Companions and allies are utilized to full effect in Metaphor. Leveling up your bond with them unlocks new archetypes and passive abilities that aid you in your journey, and it would be easy to dismiss the later characters as you don't get to spend as much time with them, but one of them was easily my favorite in the whole game, hands down. The gameplay itself is also fueled by that Atlus core that we mentioned earlier. Stylish menus and interfaces guide you through turn-based battles that you should be accustomed to if you've played any other previous Atlus outing. An element system with resistances and weaknesses add depth to the combat, and a puzzle element that you have to try and figure out what you'll need for upcoming encounters and dungeons. The right lineup can make all the difference, as difficulty can easily swing suddenly against you with an ambush from an enemy in the overworld, or having an attack be reflected during an encounter. Combat is the only aspect of this game where I ended up having any real complaint, and that's the difficulty spikes can sometimes feel too harsh. There can easily be times where resetting the fight isn't enough, and you'll find yourself entering an encounter, suffering through it and losing, only to then realize that you need to swap out your archetypes to something different. And at that point, you'll breeze through the encounter like it was nothing. The expression "forewarned is forearmed" should be printed out and mounted as a plaque on the wall for every dungeon you enter. I should say that I'm not advocating for easier fights. I don't want that. I enjoy difficulty in my games. I just don't really like the idea of the illusion of difficulty. The difficulty at times can come from your first attempt beginning to figure out the weakness, reloading, swapping out your archetypes, and then one salvoing the enemy now you have the codes. That's not difficulty. That is tedium and frustration. After finishing the game, I also tested out the storyteller mode difficulty to see how it compares, as it mentions that, like, this is for people who don't really want to focus on combat, and we are more allowing you to just enjoy the story. And it regrettably feels like a bad implementation of the idea to me. You see, if you die in storyteller, you have an option to just straight up revive in a fight, which sounds like a great idea, except that it revives you at the exact moment that you fell. So if you're halfway through a boss's turn and he's loading you up with debuffs, it will finish its turn and continue loading you up with debuffs. I tested it on some of the bosses and ended up in a weird kind of loop where I was waiting for my last character to die because they were tanky so that I could revive the party, but the boss was debuffing and healing and taking its time killing them, and so the fight ended up dragging on and becoming truly frustrating. In a mode designed to minimize friction and combat and allow you to just enjoy the story, it didn't really achieve that goal. It ends up really becoming kind of a spiky road rather than a smooth surface. At the other end of combat, though, I will say credit to Atlus for giving us the overworld combat in the style that they have. It's fantastic to see that now when you're encountering trivial combat, you can just do it in the overworld. You don't need to go into that turn-based battling system, and it allows for a faster traveling through, and it also allows for grinding to be a bit easier on you as you're just kind of wiping out these mobs, getting your XP, and moving on. You don't have to go through the turns, the end screens, and so on and so forth. But what are the tools that you're given to overcome combat and challenges in general? Well, I've mentioned the term archetypes several times now. Metaphor sees each character coming with a core archetype for them that you can then unlock for yourself and the rest of your party, allowing you freedom to sculpt your party as you wish. In general RPG terms, archetypes are your classes. Mage, knight, warrior, other fancy words here. Each one coming with a gorgeous stylized design that you would come to expect from Atlus. They look great, all of them. Each one is flawless. And each one serves a different purpose. Buffer, debuffer, magic caster, striker, all these kinds of things. On top of being able to pick an archetype to assign to each character, they also can then have inherited skills, which can be taken from the other classes that they have leveled up. So if you want Hulkenberg to be a knight with a little side of healing, you can do that. Do you prefer playing as a frontline mage? No problem. Inherited skills give you the ability to slot in extra things that you want to shape your character how you want, with one very small asterisk. Everything comes down to the power of friendship. You see, you need to bond with those closest to you, or those that have certain archetypes linked to them, to unlock their archetypes, the advanced versions, and then also unlock inherited skill slots for them to use. An example would be the main character starts with an archetype called Seeker. You need to go through their friendship and their bonding to unlock the inherited skill slots for that Seeker. For anyone else who then uses the Seeker, they get those slots. It's a simple system that works. It's great for allowing controlled freedom and also incentivizes building up those relationships. It then rewards you for that in meaningful ways, not only by giving you backstory about the characters if that's what you care about, but also by giving you tangible combat benefits. It really is a win-win situation. Playthrough, I shifted my main character a few different times between the different archetypes just to try them out. My other party members had a rough idea of what I wanted them to be, and then my protagonist was left to float around as needed to fill those gaps in my party at any one given time. If I needed a healer, they were there. If I needed extra mage damage, that was them. Also, when you get a new class or archetype in a game, I don't know about you, but I really just want to try them out. You know, when you get abilities that have great names, you just kind of want to see what it does. Each one felt like it brought its own strengths and weaknesses to the table when you unlock new archetypes as well. If for no other reason than because they literally have different strengths and weaknesses. Those weaknesses can get you killed if you're not paying attention to them, because it allows enemies to take extra turns, and that cascades, and then you're in trouble. I've limited the footage being shown to mainly be demo playthrough, as mentioned at the very top, but the set design, the environments, and just the grandeur that you can encounter throughout this game really does need a mention. The music with its over-the-top choir moments or quiet, somber reflections, juxtaposed against these backdrops of grand cathedrals or sprawling open plains and vistas, help bring life and variety to every single aspect. At no point on this grand journey did I tire of the sights that I was shown or the areas where I was. I'm sure someone in a dark corner of this internet is going to be complaining about the graphics, but I think the style used is used to full effect. I also personally love stylized designs like this that skew away from realism. I think they stand a little better against the test of time. You have games like Ni no Kuni, which still look great today because of it. So I don't care if you're going to end up seeing people say that this looks like a PS4 title or that they wish it was better. That's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. This game looks great the way it is. The calendar system also makes a return again, and while it's not one of my favorite mechanics in the game, it did end up feeling more forgiving than some of the previous usages this time. I even skipped a few days at the end of the game, simply because I felt I was prepared enough for the final boss. That's blasphemy, I know, as I could have been sat having sea salt ice cream with my best buds on a clock tower instead. But every main objective in this game will be clearly defined in that glorious 20 days remain styling, and your freedom lies in whether you want to engage it now or wait out that timer, boost your bonds, level a little bit, do some side quests and dungeons, get your archetypes up, or just explore the map a bit and go to new places. That freedom is there. You're not handcuffed to a strict through line of how to do this. There's even a system in place to show you what other players did on any specific day and who they did it with, just in case you want some guidance or ideas on how other people did things. It was refreshing to have that more relaxed approach, but still having laid out goals. It is, of course, a double-edged sword, as you can reach a key date, have an impressive and important story moment kick off, get your important revelations, get story dropped on you, and then you're ready and raring and itching to find out more, and you're dropped back into that calendar system. Or occasionally, not very often, but occasionally, you are met with mandatory, you must wait X days before continuing, which that can really knock the wind out of your sails as you're still buzzing from that high. You're champing at the bit to get more information, and instead you need to waste time reading books and planting seeds. It's not a deal breaker, but it can kind of be that, oh man, kind of moment as you just really want to keep going at that pace you were hitting. There is a lot to like about Metaphor Refantazio, and I mean a lot. I can also fully see it being polarizing to some, as it doesn't really have that flair and flashy punk anarchy vibe that Persona 5 has, but that doesn't mean it's lacking in any way though. Metaphor brings grand ideas and grand questions to the table, giving it that Atlus flair that you'd want along with a few surprises. There is a lot you can do with a core question of what does it mean to be you, and the anxiety that can bring and come with that. But to discuss those in any meaningful way, we would be having spoilers run rampant, and so we're going to kind of keep that Pandora's box sealed. In closing though, I'll say this. If you're not sure about this game, try the demo. It gives you enough of an idea about the setup, the villains, the gameplay systems, and the combat to understand what you'll be doing for the next many, many hours. I wholeheartedly recommend Metaphor Refantazio. And if it wasn't for the issues surrounding the uneven difficulty, it would be getting a perfect score. That is the only negative mark here. Not the story, not the world, not the characters, not anything else. Just that combat. And while it may not be an issue for some, depending on the difficulty you choose, your experience with Atlus games, for others it can border on frustration or it could potentially ruin your enjoyment. Which, if you're 50 hours into a game, that can just be disheartening to have happen. It never manages to fully destroy the grand monument to RPGs that Metaphor creates though, and I'm excited to see if we get any more games in this setting, or if we get the standard Atlus upgrade treatment a year from now. Either way, I want to see more of this world, with the friends that I made on this grand, fantastic journey. Metaphor Refantazio is a world you simply want to get lost in. Grand backdrops and locales to explore with a cast of interesting characters who are as colourful as they are flawed, and a class system that allows for players to find overpowered combinations to their heart's content. To me, it's the true definition of an RPG.